buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hello, YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Buffer Time. This week, we will be discussing the penultimate episode of Picard Season 3, Vox. Before we start, let's go around clockwise as we do and introduce ourselves. My name is Scott, and I'm host of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
I'm Del, and I had 2 shows this week and in very predictable ways.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
I'm Dustin from here on Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, and I think one of our other co-hosts has just joined us. Say hello!
Hey, just in time.
Howdy, I'm Robbie Sherman of Conversations with Robbie Sherman. Got the Freakazoid podcast coming up in the near future. I got an episode coming out sometime today after this podcast where I get finished up. Thank you for having me, everybody.
Of course. Okay, and now, you know how we like to start with the most important question. So, I put it to you, panel. Did you miss the carpet too?
Yes.
Did they get all the scenes out?
It makes no sense. It's not practical in the least. And that's why I like it. Because it was trying to make the visual impact of, like, this is not a warship. But it's still really impractical.
It does seem a lot like a cruise liner, but a very heavily armored cruise liner.
Yeah.
Norman, their peer pressure is relentless.
Right? Yeah, I have to admit, I was not really paying attention to the carpet. It opened Hangar Bay 12, and it's kind of expected, and I had this part, I did have this spoiled for me, but the lights go up, and I'm like, it's the D! And then they walk in the bridges, it's the bridge of the D! There's the consoles, there's the L cars.
Felt like we had a little bit of shit porn going on there. I was fine with that. It didn't linger too long.
Just a little.
Everybody wanted the D, and we got it, finally.
Yeah.
Like Tenacious. The D.
But along those lines, is the return of the D the best thing in the history of Star Trek, or just another cliche nightmare?
It's the best fucking thing in the history of Star Trek. Absolutely and totally.
Yeah, not even gonna lie, I'm stoked. Anyway.
I think it's good, but I'm so sorry, Vanessa.
Go ahead, sorry. No.
Okay, all I wanted to say was I think it's good, but I also think it's kind of easy nostalgia. So many of us are wanting to see this thing go off, by the end of the Picard series, I guess. So I just kind of think it's a given. I don't think we should necessarily take it as the greatest thing in Star Trek ever, for sure.
Well, fair. Personally, during Frontier Day, in fleet formation, you're not seeing any Galaxy-class ships, and this whole season, we've all known it's going to be a big TNG reunion, so it's inevitable the D was going to show up, as weird as that sounds.
I just thought, the explanation of how Geordi restored it was super, it's a massive stretch. A lot of the things in this episode, the disc was just on some planet and we just pieced together a bunch of other Galaxy class stuff. No one in Starfleet was tracking the fact that there was all these parts just sort of coalescing in this museum. If there's anything in this episode subject to scrutiny, it just completely falls apart. So I thought it's nice and I enjoyed it, but I feel at this late in the game, it's the whole season has been building up to this point instead of being its own thing.
Right.
And it's we're basically just building up to the movie at the end, and it's just been kind of a precursor till this point. So once they got on the D, it felt like, oh, now the show is starting, and it's this is episode 9.
Right. Right. Speaking of being its own thing, and violent subject change here. How do you feel about what was behind door number red? Because now it turns out the Borg have been pretty important in every season.
I thought it was really short. I expected this episode to take like 2/3 to 3/4 of it, just Deanna and Jack in his mind working through some metaphysical, awesome Star Trek. And it wasn't, and I'm glad it wasn't, because what we got was better, but short is my answer.
Okay.
It's just disappointing to me after like 2 whole seasons with the Borg heavily featured that we're back with the Borg again. Like the changelings weren't enough of an enemy. We got to go back to the Borg. It like, I think a friend of mine said this too, where it feels as if this season has been written by somebody who watched like 5 episodes of Trek. And they were all like, it was 5 of them were most of them were the Borg episodes. There's only been 6 Borg episodes in the original TNG, and like that's been most of Picard. So it's like, I thought we were done after season 2. Got a nice little wrap up there with the Borg Alliance, but not so much.
Yeah, and that's a whole other thing, because like at the end of season 2, you've got this, what is apparently like a whole new sort of race of Borg who I guess are going to make assimilation a choice, which is great. Where are they? They're just still hanging out, tracking that anomaly or whatever it is.
Maybe they'll come back at the very end. I don't know. I'm ready for all the enemies to come out, like the conspiracy bugs and.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're past that point, unfortunately. But yeah, I want some conspiracy bugs, but I am here for Alice Krieg. We can have the Borg. Yeah, it bothered me that, more Borg, but Alice Krieg! Who saw freaking Alice Krieg coming back 20 years later?
Nope. Not a bit.
It isn't doing much for me, honestly. All this Borg stuff and changeling stuff, it's just getting in each other's way. You know, it's like you're walking down a hallway and the hallway goes into like a weird corner, and you meet up with somebody and you keep taking steps between each other because you don't know where the other is going. And I just don't know, like what I guess the obvious thing for the season finale, since we've got this episode wrapped up the way it is, we're going to need to go into some big battle that finishes this all off, where all these different Borg and changeling people are going to be getting together in their spaceships. I'm not saying I have a problem with Star Trek action, but this is obvious Star Trek action if that's where we're headed. And I think it's very frustrating on the whole throughout this season that we've been more focused on like pulling off cool tropes than we have been about making an actual send-off to this crew.
This is fair.
And everything happens like like when Jack left, he just left without anybody getting in his way. Nobody did a dang thing to prevent him from leaving. And it's like, if Jack could easily like assimilate other people just on site, what about like Picard? What about, Beverly? Like if that was really his prerogative, I just like, there's so many things that have to happen in a row for the story to take such a violent turn. Like it's turned completely 90 degrees in a different direction.
Right.
I thought about that at first and it kind of bothered me. But the more I thought about it, I mean, then either you just think that, okay, well, Jack just then warged himself into whoever was controlling the tractor beam, or they just didn't bother because he had already taken people over to get off the ship. So, I mean, what are they going to do? It's one of those things that, it's weird on the surface, but if you think about it long enough, it's not that weird. Mm-hmm. There's way bigger fish to fry this season.
I mean, like the Titan's been taken over 4 times this season.
And nobody remembers the words command lockout.
Yeah. Like,
right.
Yeah, nothing, nobody like has a solution. It's everybody's like, Geordi goes, oh, we can't do anything. Jack leaves and we can't get in his way. Like, is everybody just helpless and without ideas?
A franchise is getting
Tanya's
frustrated.
here too.
I just don't want to say, franchise is getting frustrating when they can't even go back and look at their own rules, and they can't even look at like the things that built them up as a series, and then like the nostalgia turns into just like callbacks. Like the whole time we were on Day Sensation, I was like, man, those are other good Star Trek episodes I'd rather be watching. Like, and so much of this season kind of feels like that, and when it doesn't, it's just like what's the ultimate accomplishment for the season? Are we going to wrap up like Picard like dealing with the fact that he's a father? Like, why did we even bring that up at this point if we got a whole battle to go through with the Borg and the changelings, and then you have the narrative potential of the changelings as a single character, and this just feels like it's not going anywhere. Like I just don't know like what I'm supposed to get out of the end, and that's what's so frustrating to me at this point, because I didn't get anything out of Jack at all like this episode. I didn't get anything that was an interesting character dynamic or said one thing about him as a character. He is just a tool for the Borg Queen. He's just a tool for him and his dad and mom to fight between each other.
Right.
He's just a tool this whole episode. He's a plot
He is
tool.
the
And
whole
it's so
box
frustrating.
of tools.
Yes.
Is that why he can't kill the Borg Queen? And was anybody surprised that he couldn't?
Oh, nah.
I mean, I would think that just, I guess, like it's a maternal instinct kind of thing to not like it in a way. This is his mother, so that's why. And also, I mean, we got to keep going. We can't possibly end the story here. Like there's always something that gets in the way of the plot advancing, so they can't possibly just have Jack shoot the Borg Queen right there.
Right.
Dell, how are you feeling?
I think I had a bajillion problems with how the Borg were portrayed in this episode. Like, I loved the episode. I really did. But when I watched it a second time and then a third time, there are a lot of questions I have about these, what I've been calling Borglings, and why they are alike and dislike the Borg. But I do feel that Jack didn't shoot the Borg Queen because she still has answers that he doesn't have.
She
Like,
says
how did this
specifically, though,
happen, or-
that he can't,
Yeah.
which seems weird.
He's been assimilated, so I'm pretty sure he's got those answers now.
Yeah. I don't know. I have lots of questions about what happens at assimilation.
That's fair. But how about like the thing with the two main villains' plots and how they like kind of fit together? Are the changelings and the Borg working together? Because it kind of seems like the changelings just somehow figured out what the Borg did and now they've weaponized it.
Exactly. They're using the Borg as a weapon. That's something very changeling to do, to sort of orchestrate from the outside, which is sort of contrary to how they've been depicted, which is very hands-on and willing to die for their cause. So it's like a little, odd that like Jack is seen as this weapon, and yet Jack going to the Borg Queen is really the point of like Jack existing, if that makes sense. Like he's the, transponder going back to, the mother or something. It was all very like, are you my mother kind of thing.
Yeah, and I still I want to know more about this picture that I have up here about Jack being a natural transmitter and natural receivers and stuff. This seems weird to me.
An organic one, apparently.
Trek is notoriously terrible at depicting anything close to reality when it comes to genetics and how things are passed down. I think this is another example of that. I mean, look at, the salamanders in Voyager, and
or just the character doll from Prodigy.
Yes, like the way that things are passed down, like that like Picard has like magic DNA that gets infused into a baby through Beverly. It's just
with no nanobots, with no nanoprobes.
Right. And like they said, only 35 years after the sequencing of the DNA could they find that thing. That's just so convenient and silly to have to say that.
That's some real anime plotting right there. I love that kind of.
Yeah. All right, what do we get next? Okay. It's a bit of a jump ahead, but did the end of the episode remind anyone else of the Prodigy finale? Like I think I've been
Yes.
saying since
Yeah, a lot.
Jordy was talking about the ships being able to talk to each other.
Yeah, there's a
That's
lot of
such a bad
analogy
idea.
there to what happened, and so much of it just doesn't make sense because of that.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
we're like 16, 17 years on from that event, so why didn't we take the living construct as a warning and, you know, maybe not do what they're doing right now, trying to link all the ships?
And this happened like before Discovery left, right? So Control is still also like a thing that Starfleet knows about and is doing nothing.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, that one's weird though, because God only knows. We don't know how it started. We don't know how far it went through, and in theory, it's dead. So,
But I'm just
whatever.
saying, like,
I don't know.
it felt like that to me.
Yeah.
Like, they should have been prepared. They've been given all of these warning signs, and they're not prepared.
I mean, wasn't the warning that like there was a terrorist attack where a bunch of people died? Did everybody forget about that? I guess it just
It's
didn't
behind
matter.
us.
Yeah.
It's in
I
the
know.
past. Don't worry about it. It's in the past.
Like a
It could
week.
never happen again. That's
They
how
all
we're
keep
going to
better.
operate in the future.
Keep looking forward. They really
Being
like
positive.
Yeah, that whole thing just ceases to matter.
Right.
Like it's like nobody thought, oh, maybe we should take some security precautions. Maybe there's something afoot or a finger. Nothing.
I wonder
And
if
nobody was
Terry-
thinking that. Not even Admiral Shelby. I mean, like, why would she endorse a technology like this?
Yeah, that's the most clueless part of all the people that could introduce this. She's the last one that makes any sense to head it up.
You know what I think it was? We had a question here about like why they keep bringing back like legacy characters so they can just get Game of Thrones. Not long after I saw this episode, there were people talking, I think on Twitter, was like, why wasn't it Janeway giving that message? It's like, because if it had been Janeway, people would have been really upset because she eventually died.
Yeah, is there a single non-main character that's been brought back in Picard at all that did not die? I can't think of one.
7 of 9 isn't dead yet.
Non-main character. She's
Oh,
a main
non-main character.
Yeah, she's been through all three seasons.
But every other character that we've seen before that has come back that's
Guinan?
not a main. Who?
Guinan?
Hugh?
Yeah.
Wait, Hugh died?
Hugh died.
No, I said Guinan.
How much
Yeah, I know.
remember
Scott
Stevens.
said Hugh, but yeah, no, you're kind of right. She's a little closer to a main character than some, but yeah.
I can't think of one.
Guinan's the only one, I think.
Speaking of Guinan, I'm going to call it next episode that we're going to have a big get together, at Guinan's bar with the blues music playing. I could just see it now. That's how they're going to tie up this like theme they've been doing since earlier in the season that they completely abandoned around episode 4.
Well, now at least we've got a better idea why they kept using the crap out of that set from last season.
Right?
You know,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like, oh, well, they're clearly saving money for something, and it was rebuilding the Bridge of the D, which they did a heck of a good job
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a practical set. There's no like CGI or like other, like the Elcars are still backlit. Like
Is that lionfish still alive? Like,
He
is
got
it
assimilated.
Somebody asked
skeleton?
someone
Yeah.
if they rebuilt the fish tank in the
Horrified.
training room, too. Okay, so we got everybody in fleet formation, and next thing you know, the Borg send out their call and assimilate everyone. So was Seven able to resist that Borg call because her cortical node wasn't the original one? Or is it, do you think, the explanation they kind of gave as to why only certain people were assimilated?
Well, I mean, she's older, so she doesn't fall into that category of people, but she probably just felt it because it's a Borg signal at all, but it's
Right.
not meant for her.
It just felt like a sort of win for boomers that are still watching this at this point. Like, oh, those yes, Livingston the lionfish. Thank you. Yeah, like I just felt like this was just some sort of last hurrah for the original fans of TNG to be
Right.
like it's all the young people that are needing saving at this point.
I can also see it as a commentary on how millennials and Gen Zs are more technologicalized than their elders. And their point of view from the elder side is that they're becoming sort of one with the internet. They can't really exist without it. If you take their phone away, they have like epileptic seizures over it.
Oh,
And I think that could also be part of what this is about, is talking about the next generation and how they're being seen by the older generation.
Yeah, here's what I really, really want to see before the end of this next episode. I want to see the crew of the D get into a bind that they can't get out of themselves, and then I want all of the other main characters from the previous seasons of Picard to show up to get them out of that situation. I want Raffi, I want Seven, I want Borgatti, I want friggin' Elnor if he didn't get blown up on the Excelsior. I want a Rios hologram coming in on La Serena. If I don't get these things, I'm gonna be pissed.
Where is the La Serena right now?
Great question.
does that include Narek?
Yeah, I want to know what the frig happened to Narek at the end of season 1. Where did he go?
He got arrested for a robot.
Okay, but like along those lines. Oh wait, are you talking about? You're just talking about from this series in particular?
Yeah.
Oh, Terry Matalas said
I
Elnor was
didn't
not
see
on
that.
that. Oh, good.
Well, that's good to know because
Thank
I
you.
just figured that, with the most useless character that they purposely did absolutely nothing with in the story for 2 seasons, they just wrote out nonchalantly and, oh, hey, he was on that ship. Bye, Elnor.
Right? First, Romulan and Starfleet. Bye.
Why would we need a Romulan warrior nun in plots about
as soon
Romulans?
as-
I mean,
it's
God.
almost like they sort of storyboard things and they just have an end and they don't really think about like how they're going to get to the end. They just know that whatever the end is, it's going to die. And it's always very unceremonious when that happens. That same thing with like Shaw. I absolutely hated his death. I hated his death scene so much.
I came up with this ticker.
Is that like solidarity for dipshits from Chicago or?
That too. But also like him saying like, oh, I'm calling you Seven now as the Borg is taking over his ship. It's just very cloying.
We all knew it was coming.
I really wasn't impressed by the scene, to be honest. Like, I thought they were taking way too long. That guy would have killed them already if he was, like, paying any attention at all. Does this show have any understanding of what people attacking you is actually like? Like, they're not just going to stand there and watch you when they're, like, 5 feet away behind a crate. They're just going to keep shooting. Like, they're going to overpower you. Like, this is crazy that this thing took like 15 seconds even. Like, they should have just immediately got out of there. The show has no understanding of human emotion sometimes. I think like it's wild to watch this. Like, what I get, like, they want to put in last words, and I'm not opposed to like cinematic tics, but this just seemed ridiculous and it didn't work at all on any level for me.
Yeah, I figured it was going to be in the finale, but I guess they didn't want, or they couldn't make any room for any classic characters on the D, or any non-classic characters on the D.
Nope.
Because a crew of 7 can absolutely fly a Galaxy-class starship.
Yeah, somebody can make coffee.
Fly, yes. I mean, as long as you're not going out on an extended mission. I mean, we saw just Picard and Riker were able to fly it for a short bit by themselves.
Are they going to separate the saucer section?
I mean, it's probably only held on by like duct tape and self-sealing stem bolts, so it'll probably just break off halfway through the mission anyway.
That was a comment I was going to make earlier. Is that I would have liked it when we saw the D to make it look a little bit more homemade. Like, yes, it was a gorgeous, wonderful, beautiful reveal, but I think I would buy that Geordi has been fixing it for 20 years if it had some stray wires or like one of the Elcars was kind of patched together with some electrical tape or something to make it look like it's a project, like it's a passion project and not like I'm going to perfect this so we can take it into battle.
Well, I mean, we only saw the bridge, which I could see him taking the time to really get it, nice.
Yeah,
So-
no, we saw engineering too.
We did?
And yeah, and it was thoughtless.
Where? I don't remember. I'm not saying that you're wrong,
Yeah,
but even
no.
if we did, at least that one we know it came from a whole other ship, so it's probably fine.
That's true. I may be wrong, but I have the
I don't
memory.
remember seeing the engineering, but I
remember
don't
because I
disbelieve
remember
it.
thinking, why is no one in engineering? Maybe that's why I think I see empty engineering. Is because like why are Data and I mean I know there's an engineering station on the bridge, but with the stuff they're about to go through, I think I would want Data and Geordi in engineering. Call me weird.
That's fair.
I'd be really surprised if we see the engineering set though, because if they had to recreate that, like man, that's some money. Though
With that elevator that goes up and down.
I hope so. But I mean, they've certainly stripped the budget from some other places in this season. It's only a question of what they've used it for. I guess we'll find out.
You know where that money should have gone to? Plot resequencing. Let me
Better
tell you.
writers?
Any
Maybe
story
that's a little
happening.
harsh.
No,
Yeah,
it's all
I
going
feel
to
like
end.
just go
It's
ahead.
all going to end because Terry Metellus will appear and like do a little shuffle off to Buffalo with a hat, and that will be the end.
Yeah, see, here's what I see. I see a show that could have been written by pretty much anybody that knew just a few things about TNG and wanted to just throw all the fun bits of nostalgia in there. I see Terry that really does know Star Trek, but doesn't seem to be able to get his writers under control. I don't think he's a particularly good showrunner, but you know what he is? He is a great fucking director. This episode, mint, nicely directed.
There are moments that are excellent, like
Oh, yeah.
just the way they like shoot everything on the bridge. It does achieve that nostalgia, even if I feel complicated by that nostalgia. Like I still think it looks incredible, though. I definitely think the money could have gone to something else. I will watch these guys like float around in a crappy old ship like that wasn't this thing.
What I don't understand is how they're so confident that the D will not be assimilated because they already have like Picard's, Locutus's information stored in the Borg collective. So it's like they made this really quick decision to sort of like conveniently make it so that the D is the exception pitted against all of Starfleet. Yeah, it was a real huge stretch.
It's interesting they phrased it as like analog versus digital. Well, they didn't say digital, but like, oh, this is the analog version. It's okay.
Yeah, I thought that was
And
weird
you're
too.
old.
I want them to open it up and have like big tape reels inside that they got to smush around.
That's the thing about like I remember you, Del, mentioning that this is a sort of like commentary possibly on like social media and the sort of groupthink, but at the same time it's like the technology making that groupthink possible has been available since the D was around. I mean, they had like subspace channels and all that stuff. So the sort of like groupthink, it's a awkward way to do it, to sort of like divide it by generations at this point in the timeline for me.
Right. Okay. Since the Borg are just sprinkled through this whole thing, why was Shaw okay with a Borg first officer taking command of his assimilated ship? I mean, this should be his worst nightmare. besides the fact that she isn't
Okay.
actually in charge right now, she's gonna have to fight back to get it. But yeah. And how many people like are of a certain age to be assimilated in Starfleet? You're talking about age 25. I feel like that's a lot of young officers per ship.
Well, I mean, there would be, because you're going to have a lot of people that wash out and don't take the lifelong career path. A lot of them are only going to, make it to about 30 and then drop out and do something different. So I can see that. It makes sense that probably half are that age. I mean, think about the military.
But but this isn't the military. It's not supposed to be.
It is a space navy. Don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not because if their main goal was exploration, then they wouldn't need fresh blood all the time. That's another distinction
Yeah,
between
sure.
this version of Starfleet and the past, where it's like they are very clearly a military organization.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that Shaw almost died at Wolf 359, didn't die, but now he's dying at the hands of the Borg on his own ship, and he's giving command over to Seven, who he has refused to, call by her proper name this whole time, and finally he comes around to it as his entire crew is being assimilated. It's just very hard to believe.
I really like Norman's comment here about, maybe we can still bring Shaw back, because, Seven brought back Neelix. Slightly different circumstances.
Yeah.
Neelix wasn't bleeding out, but anything's possible. I want to see him climb that Black Mountain, because I don't care about Star Trek Legacy if we don't have Shaw in command of the Titan. I don't.
Oh, come on. You don't want Riker in command of the Titan? Wouldn't that be incredible?
Well, that would be fine, but it's going to be Seven, and I would be okay with that. But I really liked Shaw. I really liked seeing the universe through the lens of somebody that doesn't just take it for granted at how much you need to know about it. He was so naive. I loved him getting all the little points as it went along, where most everybody else already kind of was one step ahead of him.
No, I bet that'll be Riker's Picard style show. He's totally gonna take over from Seven, and then he's gonna hijack the whole thing. We're gonna have cool space adventures with Riker, because that totally seems like a move. Those show writers would play.
Riker's got stuff to do back home.
Riker did take over the ship, the Titan, at one point. He was given command by Shaw when he got shot, and he let it sink into a gravity well and was fully ready to just be put everything on life support. We're dying. That's it.
I wasn't even
I don't want him to take command anymore.
I don't want him to either, but that totally seems like a move these people would play just to reward a legacy chapter or something.
So here's the thing with this comment below. They weren't saying that the Borg were a species, that Picard in his new form and his altered DNA have been set as its own species, I think was what they were saying. So it's not, they weren't saying that the Borg are a species, just that Picard in his altered DNA has now been categorized as a species of one.
And then Jack's another species of one, because they're opposites. One receives, the other transmits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think you were muted, Del.
Oh, are you muted, Del?
I was. Talk about the last thing you were talking about. I didn't make a note. Talk about the last thing you were talking about.
Sorry, about the Borg being not being.
Oh,
a
the
species.
Borglings. Yes, the Borglings. So here are some of my issues with the Borglings that I don't understand. All right. They can't generate the shields that have to make the phasers modulate. Their phaser fire doesn't change or do anything more damaging. They have no technology, so they can't jack into the systems and make the ship do something. I mean, they have all the ensigns and lieutenants doing it, but they're ensigns and lieutenants. So how is the ship running smoothly if it's full of these Borglings who are super young and inexperienced are now flying the Titan? And there's no like if you put a 14-year-old in a manual car, it's not going to be smooth sailing on the first try. And I think a spaceship might be a little bit more complicated.
Oh, hey, look, pictures. I can't see what's in them again.
I
We are here again.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, is this being assimilated going to make them more competent and able to solve problems? Because whenever they've been given orders or told to, figure something out, they're like, we can't. That's been like the Titan Bridges motto. We can't do that.
Right? Well, presumably they have a connection to the hive mind, so I mean,
do they?
Yes, sir.
We didn't see them generate. You were talking about like the shields and stuff they can generate to disrupt phase. We didn't actually see that happen. I don't think they have all of the features that a full Borg would, but we don't quite know yet. We didn't see a lot of what they do. They just
so is this like
sat
the
there
next
menacingly.
Is this like the next evolution of Borg? Because we had like Borgatti Borg, and now we have another Borg. Okay.
Borgatti is just it's an offshoot. She's not the collective. Her and her group are just they're kind of Borg, but they're not the Borg.
Before we get too far off the topic of whatever Borg-related thing we have going on next, I just wanted to say when Jack got lifted up to be put into the system, it looked so Spider-Man too. Like, I love that on a certain level. Like, I love it when you have like these long silver spindly things hooking into a main character and turning him villainous or something like that. Another frame I can barely see. Fantastic.
Right.
Lots of like cliched visual shorthands, like doors, shadows, silhouettes, eyes going black. It's very, like I said, it's giving very Are You Afraid of the Dark? Spoopy.
Yeah, I'd like to. Robbie you had said in our group chat the other day that one of the things you don't like about this season is the cinematography, which I completely disagree with you about. Yeah, the lighting is crap, and the director of photography should probably be fired for letting that happen.
Okay, well maybe I'm
Sean.
giving a bad name, but go ahead, please. Sorry.
But yeah, no, I was just going to give you my side, then you can
Yeah,
talk
go ahead,
about what
please.
you hate from the cinematography. I love especially the transition shots that a lot of the directors have tried through the season, where like they'll come up from the floor and there'll be somebody's reflection and then it goes up to them. There's this really nice transition just in this last episode when they show the plaque on the D and it's got like mirrored LCARS stations and then it focuses back to show you where you really are. And I like how they've done a lot of the camera work. Just I wish I could see what was happening with what they've pointed the camera at.
Yeah, I think I would like to specify that I think a lot of my target is just the lighting because lighting enhances your cinematography in a way that you need at times. And with what they have going on here, I think that obscures some of the better work, and that's part of the reason why it doesn't immediately call to my attention as something better.
That makes sense. Oops.
Della, I think you're muted again.
I was going to say, I think we needed more shades of gray, which is a weird thing for me to say. But like they just started out dark and now they're trying to create shading by going darker. And I'm like, if we started a little lighter, you'd have a lot more play in the lighting scheme. Whereas now you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, I thought it might have been like a tool, like they started us really dark and then we were getting lighter and lighter every episode until this past one where, yeah, it's like a mix of some of it's light, some of it's dark. And now it just seems like, I thought it was like a nice creative twist, but it's clearly just that they don't know how to do lighting.
Except on the D where, you have to because everything was always light and bright.
And even that's a little darker than normal, but I can live with it.
Yeah.
It felt like, those horror games when you like a PS4 horror game where you're like turning it up just barely enough so you can actually see what you're doing. That's what a lot of the lighting on this last season is giving me for sure.
Makes sense.
I guess you could also translate that to like it having similarities to the first Resident Evil movie. Like, there's a lot of running around corridors, setting up perimeters.
But I never felt like I couldn't see things in that. And that's one of my favorite movies.
Really, that's one of your favorite movies. Interesting. Very interesting.
Just because
All
the
right.
plot doesn't really go much of anywhere. It's an awesome action sequence. Michelle Rodriguez for life.
It's a great vehicle for Mila Jovovich, I'll say that.
Fuck
I
yeah.
felt like the Borglings in this episode felt like zombies. It felt like like a zombie attack because they went all gray and they have like veins in their face and they're like walking around kind of, in formation. It just felt like zombies to me.
Because this is Thriller, am I right?
It's thriller night. It's dark.
This does have kind of John Landis like horror comedy energy at times.
Yeah. Honestly, one of the best lines in this episode. It's like, Data, can you be more positive? I hope we die quickly.
Is that supposed to be his version of Today is a Good Day to Die?
Oh. I don't know. I just thought it was I thought it was just a comedic beat. Like, oh, we get it. Data knows humor now, and he's actually pretty good at it.
Yeah, I think Funny Data, if we keep going with like more pessimistic lines like that, will work out okay. But of course, we only have one more episode to go, so we don't really have that much time to explore all that now, do we?
Yeah. He's got that delivery though. It was as perfect as like the end of Undiscovered Country where Spock's like, if I were human, I believe my response would be go to hell.
I don't think the season's had enough colorful metaphors.
Judging by the lighting, they didn't have much color or anything. Anyway. Okay, so what iconic character that we haven't seen yet would you like to see come back in the final episode, probably just to be killed off? Like, I'm here, I'll save you.
O'Brien, because he must suffer.
Yes. It's his lot in life. It's not a lot, but it's his life.
Well,
I'd be happy to see Borgatti come and sort of be an alliance to help get rid of the Borg. That's who I would want back.
what about you, Vanessa? What do you want?
Honestly, maybe Rios will come back. I don't know. It's really hard to it's like pick a character or any character. They all just sort of like get spun in just as and written out just as quickly. So it's like,
Yeah.
is an additional character coming in out of nowhere going to help anything? I don't know. I'd be interested to see Esri, Worf's, kind of sort of X in a way, just to see the look on Worf's face. But I'm not super invested in another character returning.
Yeah,
It's gonna be Kirk. I mean, they showed his body at Daystrom for a reason. They got to bring him back for like 5 seconds, right?
I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen any kind of cameo from William Shatner. I mean, I know he's in his 90s and it's hard to book somebody like that, but I'm sure he wants like $10 million for a 2-minute cameo, but I think we've got to see it at some point. I doubt it'll be this episode, but that would be fun. That would be fun.
And it might be the Kirk from Strange New Worlds.
Oh, please, for the love of
Sure.
God, no.
But I'm saying if their choice is a 95-year-old man who's going to ask for a ton of money, or an actor who's just starting to make a name,
They will have to age up a bit.
but still. I don't
Well,
know.
here's a related question that we didn't have. What
Yes, please.
main character do you think won't make it out of the finale? I
Data.
still think Picard is not going to make it.
They play that like character dying, the main character dying thing so hard that it's really hard to like build that up because they already killed Picard in season 1.
Right.
And now he's got a new body. So if they kill him again, there's no guarantee he's going to stay dead because Data's died like 3 times.
And I think that's the reason we won't see Data die again, because
Mhm.
he's already died enough times.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Troy, that's actually something I would believe would happen. Somebody commented Troy dying. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Raffi ended up dying. Like, that seems like a side character that they'd be okay with killing off. Like, her journey has been kind of like, uh, it's not really been there this season. We've
All
been getting
over the place.
Yep.
We've just been getting like glimpses of it here and there, and then like it seems like there's character movement going on there, but not really. Like I just really have been complicated by the Worf and Raffi Sensei type of relationship they have going on.
Yep.
Maybe if they'd had time to flesh that out, that would have been okay. But I think it remains another undeveloped part of this season.
Yeah, I mean, look at this is the only picture I have of Raffi, and she's blurred in the background of 7.
Ouch.
Oh wow.
Now, I still say Data though, just because it's like the easy out. You know, we've killed him before. We can kill him again. And it's
Not a human we have to worry about or anything.
What?
It's not a human we have to worry about the
Yes,
plot
that's
or
exactly
anything.
exactly the point I was getting at. Like, if you're gonna kill anybody, kill the android. Again.
I did enjoy the line that 7 had about calling Data a robot, like the robot's right. I actually enjoyed that. Like there's these little glimpses of like little bits of humor in there, and it's almost like it's so tantalizingly close. Like they could root these characters in reality, and then they, completely write something that isn't necessary. Fireworks in space. We got like 5 minutes of watching fireworks.
Oh gosh.
What? Who's seeing that? Who cares?
Who can see that? Since when can you like do that in space?
I think
They're
it's all like
antimatter weapons, but
I just think that
pretty colors.
I think that's all like computer simulation and like all the sounds and stuff are like on probably not even loudspeakers. They're probably coming through their little headsets or inside
No,
the
Robbie,
consoles.
they're real. These are real space fireworks. They definitely lit these. All this stuff is real, not computer generated. I refuse.
The
No,
Enterprise.
no, I don't mean it like that. I just mean like for them to do that, like whole thing, that totally seems like a holographic thing going on. Like that doesn't seem like anything they can accomplish with their weapons.
Picard is my savior. He can't die. He'll just be risen again.
Side note: what do we think of this Enterprise F here, the Odyssey class?
I don't think much of it, and here's why. Because clearly Starfleet didn't think much of it. Let's look at every flagship that we know of in the show, and most of those classes run 20 to 30 years before being decommissioned. Now,
Sure.
I haven't gone, I'm sure if I go to Memory Alpha, somebody's figured out a date of commissioning for this thing, but the Enterprise E was commissioned in the early 2380 or the late 2370s, right? So if that ran for even just 20 years, you're at the end of the century, and then this one's only been around for less than 10 years, and we're already decommissioning it. So I don't think very much of it.
I mean, it was more of a design thing for me. I like the shape of the saucer, how it's a little bit elongated, and the thinner nacelles. The weird thing underneath, like if you're looking at it straight on, how like the saucer section is, I don't know if it splits, but like the saucer section is connected to the battle section. It doesn't have like a neck, like just like a neck like the Galaxy class. It has like 2 supports. That kind of gets me a little bit, but I don't know. That's probably just me nitpicking.
I was gonna bring this up too, that all of Starfleet is instantly Borgified. Not a single person comes up with some kind of counterbalance, sort of counteracting this thing. Nothing. It's just instantaneous. Like that does just like enemies take over so quickly and so effortlessly that it's really hard to become invested in what comes next, because it's like they're going to be defeated by it, whatever it is, until they're not defeated anymore, until the writers just decide, okay, they win.
This is quite the fleet, though. It's very, very impressive. After the crap that they fed us in that copy and paste fleet in season 1, I gotta give it to the CGI team in this one. Amazing.
Yeah. Someone clarify the shapes that these ships are forming, though, because I could not understand that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what tactical ability it gives them.
Yeah, I was looking at it
Like,
from
who are they doing
more
this
like
for?
a. I was looking at it more like if there were any shapes of runes or other sort of symbolic language. And I didn't come up with anything. Like I looked at Enochian and all other like really super rare or non-speakable. Like I even looked at Esperanto, even though that's not real letters. I couldn't find anything that made any kind of cogent sense. The two at the end look like music clefs to me. They look like G clefs to me.
There's Even Eater.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can see that.
I mean, I think I think it's Way of the Warrior in DS9, where the battle scenes in that, I think those were, the large scale battles. That to me was the ultimate. This is just I mean, it's impressive to see the entire fleet like this. It's just like leading up, everything that leads up to these like huge moments is really hard to like, it's sort of hard to separate that emotionally.
Yeah, well, the episode you just mentioned was the last full analog, no CGI used huge battle scene.
Right.
They even used just to get more in there. They took was it birds of prey from Hallmark ornaments and spiced them up a little bit and threw them in there just so they had more. Those were the days. But I don't know. I might even take today over this. This is freaking awesome.
I do think, yeah, I really do think the CGI holds up throughout the show, and I think this is a top quality production in that manner. This is probably one of the better looking of the newer Star Trek series because of that. And even though I have these qualms with the lighting and occasional just sloppy cinematography, like occasionally, like I can tell where like they fudge like a take or something, and like somebody doesn't like come down right on a on a hit or something. It's yeah, but the CGI and the way the planets look and the way the ships look, it's all incredible. Like it's the type of stuff a lot of Star Trek fans always dream of when they think about fully CGI Star Trek.
Okay.
So-
I know there's a question here I missed somewhere, but
There's no way we're out of questions.
oh no, we're not. We just been all over the place. So yeah, the entire fleet is under control of assimilated people. Is there going to be a way to recover them?
Yeah, and it'll probably end up being easier than whatever happened with the Valnicott and the living construct, because that left like all the ships that went into it pretty much done for after that. This, I have a feeling that we're gonna see some fleet damage. Not all the ships will make it, but I have a feeling it's just gonna be like an off switch, and I'm sure it's gonna have to do with Jack. Because let me see if I can find the picture. I still don't understand what we're looking at here, or what the point of this was.
I feel like that had something to do with when Jack first got into the nebula, and his shuttle computer identified a transwarp conduit. Like, I feel like that had something to do with it so that the Borg could, broadcast from wherever it was they were to be able to assimilate everybody. Which would kind of explain why they waited until Frontier Day when everyone was gathered together.
That was very convenient. That was very convenient. Everybody, no matter where they're exploring in the quadrant, they're all right there. Very cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody had, I can't remember which channel, whether it was like Trek Culture or Screen Crush or who, but said something about this being like they wouldn't have been able to do this broadcast without Jack, and that was the whole point of getting him.
Yep.
So like if he hadn't just literally shown up on their doorstep at the right moment, the Borg wouldn't have been able to do shit? Really? This was their plan?
And not only that, like one of the other questions we had, we spent 7 episodes of Vadic trying to get Jack to go to the Borg, and then he's just going to go himself. This all smacks a little bit too much of convenience, yeah.
Yeah, those 8 episodes were sure used wisely.
That is what unmoors me from the overall story. Like, he just walked in to his, like, fate or whatever it is, and all these episodes we spent trying to keep him from being abducted are just gone. Like, it didn't matter that we did all that stuff, and now we're on a new quest, and we gotta finish that up in 2 episodes, and that just feels so underwhelming on a certain level. If we're gonna do, like, big battle scenes in the next thing, then we really have to make those things count. Like, we really have to show some real levity in how we stage these scenes and make them pull off between the characters. I'm so frustrated by this season. So sorry.
Yeah, someone said, how did Stop George commented here? I don't know how to stick it on the main thing, but it says, how did Jack escape from the Titan? Can't find him because he turned his transponder off. Exactly. Like, everything's so convenient. Like, all he has to do is switch it off. Like, Data and Geordi can't come up with, like, on TNG, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not like a big nostalgia person who like really, but the thing is, like, those 2 people are specifically like angled towards not just giving up at the first sign of an obstacle. And then they're just like, yeah, we can't find him. That's it. Like, everybody's a quitter on Picard this season.
And then again, later in the episode, I mean, they had already like destroyed the Excelsior. And meanwhile, the old crew of the D we're just going to shuttle on out of here in front of the entire fleet. No problem.
They're not paying attention. They're not going to look behind them.
Yeah, that fleet was literally single-minded.
They're too old, so they can go. That's so silly. Like, the shuttle is not whatever.
Starships in Mirror may be dumber than they appear.
Oh, damn, I was going to say something too.
Man, I was like, here, I'm going to like give up my number kind of early, but I was ready to give this goddamn episode a 9. And the more I talk about it, the less it's going to get.
I'm actually with you there, Okay, two more major questions. Let's see. Quitting's the theme in season 3. I like that. Just give up. But I don't know if we talked about this or if it was just before the show. What do you think about the first credit for Majel Barrett since her death in 2009?
That was the point of this episode that hit me harder than the rest. I mean, some people like, oh my God, the D? I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. But when we heard Majel, that's when it drove it home for me. Thanks, Majel.
Yeah, I was watching, the lights come up, everybody's walking around the bridge and wonder, I was like, oh, great, the D is back, but wait a minute, it's not going to have the same computer voice. And then immediately, same computer voice. It's like, oh, you did it. You got me. My feels. What about you guys?
I'm really glad that Majel's mentioned, but not in the same breath as Lixana. Lixana is not the manifestation of Majel that I want to have back, but I'm glad that she's being mentioned. You know, she's the glue that held this idea together, I think.
Right.
It's
I just wonder if we'll get because this one was clearly a reuse of a direct recording that they had of Majel
course.
from TNG, but before she died, she had recorded all the lines necessary to do like a Siri.
oh,
So, but I don't understand why it has never been brought back. I don't know if it just wasn't up to par once they put it together, because I've been really surprised that we have not, up till this point, heard Majel.
I enjoyed it personally, but I also think it's small gains in a season that's mostly small gains, so it doesn't really give me like a big rush or anything. I I don't know. I kind of would like maybe something different. Like I know we were going to have nostalgia in the season. I'm not completely immune to that, but I do think like at a certain point we need to quit a lot like going into these little traps of nostalgia because that's what it feels like. Little sand traps of nostalgia where we can have fun for a minute and then we gotta get back to our major plot. Ooh boy. It sure is important, but we gotta stop here and kind of look around and marvel at everything. Like, it feels like real frustrating stop and start storytelling to me. Like, and Majel is, one wonderful, important part of Star Trek history. I have no problem with her whatsoever. That's fine, but that's that's just like a tiny little thing for her. Like that doesn't even give viewers an impression of what she actually does for the series. And that's what these little nostalgia traps accomplish. They show off like a thing that fans can point out, like like it's almost like a Family Guy thing. Like, ha, I know that thing, I know that reference, so I got that joke, and that can be fun at times. And I don't have any problem with anyone liking this episode, but I'm getting frustrated by little stuff like this. And I hope the next episode we get some actual major payoffs on some level.
Well, we're gonna have to because that's
Yeah,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I really do think that like this entire season has been just build up to the movie at the end. Like it's badly paced. There's almost no plot. They constantly have these episodes where almost nothing happens. And then there's like established new characters coming in where you're quickly trying to like tie them emotionally together. And how can you possibly do that in like a single conversation or a single episode? So, the pacing here is just out of whack. And it's by design. It felt like an accident. It felt like it wasn't planned. And then at this point, it certainly does feel like deliberate that they just built it to the very end.
Yeah. I think about half of us just now answered the last question I had, but let's press on anyway. Do you have high hopes for the finale? Do you think it will feel final? Like, yeah, I really feel like Robbie and Vanessa just answered this, but we're here.
Aren't we supposed to get Star Trek Legacy?
It's been talked
They're
about.
pushing for
We
it.
don't
Yeah.
know.
Well,
I do have one final weird Dell theory on what's going to happen.
please.
You want to hear my weird Dell theory? Don't tear it
Sure.
apart. But in order to overthrow the Borg, they send Jack into the future, and he shows up on Starfleet Academy.
Maybe
That's my new wacky
Like,
theory.
this season 2 thing again.
I just don't think that Starfleet's necessarily worth saving if they're capable of infecting the Great Link with a genocidal virus. That's my take on it. It's
But
nice
then
that you feel justified in doing this to like, oh, they're Borgified, we have to do something about it. I mean, sure. But Federation and Starfleet, I don't know. I don't know if they deserve to survive this.
If you say it that way, though, then basically what you're saying is every galactic power out there doesn't deserve to survive this because
That's
they
great.
would do the exact same thing and then some. So
Right.
This is Metallis's like treatise on the fallibility of governments. That's what this whole season is. Okay, I see it now. I finally have an end goal here. Okay, that's better. I don't know if he's doing a great job, but that's still better than what we had.
Right. No more mystery boxes in Trek.
Yeah, I agree. Norman, I totally agree.
Oh yeah.
Like, I feel like that's been a big part of Picard, has been the mystery box thing. And I think that's what we keep running up against. Like, it's so fun to theorize and try to figure out what's behind the red door, what's up with Jack. That was fun. But then it got to be the point, like, just tell us. Just tell us.
We also don't really care about Jack
It's fun.
enough to like, you know, be that invested on what happens to him, because we just introduced to him, and at first he was like this rogue that was kind of a jerk, and then he had a chip on his shoulder with his dad that didn't even know he existed 2 seconds before, and then he hates his dad for no reason, and then he's like, oh, I love you, Dad, and now he's like, F you, Dad, and runs off the ship. He's very like plot device. He doesn't really have much of a character of his own. He's barely a human being. So it's like whatever behind the red door, it's like it'll just get us closer to the end. Thank God.
Yeah.
This season of Picard feels more like new Star Wars than it does Star Trek, honestly. Like when I think about like how the characters are being handled and all these big action scenes, and then like these character moments that don't necessarily add up to anything more for the overall plot, like this does seem a lot like the new Star Wars series.
I have to disagree with our commenter here, like pretty hard.
Yeah.
Actually,
Star
Trek's always been about melodrama.
But there's like been a sort of like moral lesson underpinning to what's going on typically with Trek, and with this season, it's just completely out the window. There's no reason to even begin to think in that lane, because like the things that Starfleet has connected itself with action wise completely undermines the sort of like humane, idealistic future utopia that they're trying to build at the beginning. Like, it has no connection to what's going on right now.
Oh, is it too far over the top? Yes. Oh yeah. But Star Trek's always been about melodrama.
Okay. All right, before we do this, I'm going to go with my theory. Ready for this? Okay. At the end, they're fighting off the Borg. Changelings are going to show back up. Out of nowhere, we get the other Borg, the goodish Borg. All kinds of confusion. No one knows what's going on. And then in the middle of it, it's Q. Q, turns out, was not actually dead. I know, Del, but bear with me because it gets even crazier. And that is the point when Jean-Luc Picard realizes that this entire thing is crazy, and he wakes up in bed next to Laris. The entire season was a dream, people. The entire season was a dream.
Written by
that is my least favorite.
Oh, I don't
like,
know.
It's like I honestly hope that happens so we can headcanon this entire season out. But then, but that it's just a dream thing is so like.
The only thing I would change is that it's Q who wakes up, and all of Picard has been like this hallucination in Q's mind. Like even him dying, it would explain how Q dies. It would explain a lot. Right. Unfortunately, if he just wakes up and goes, "What the hell was that?" I'll never have Romulan ale again.
I should go pay Jean-Luc a visit.
Right.
I'm thinking somewhere along those lines. What I'm thinking to tie in season 2 to the rest of the Borg stuff is that we find out that the changeling Borg alliance is what killed Q.
Right, that was the other question. Did we think they were the ones that somehow killed Q?
I think they did.
And how?
That's a good question. We haven't played the full game of Clue yet.
I do find it interesting that everything in this episode is happening in a vacuum. Like nobody in the Klingon alliance, nobody in the Vulcan, nobody around in the Alpha Quadrant is noticing that something is amiss. Not a single person.
Non-Federation ship.
Nobody else is in the Sol system watching this Frontier Day. Like, what?
Yeah, if I was on Earth,
Sorry, go ahead, Harvey.
No, I just wanted to say, if I was on Earth, I'd be flipping out. Like, what they're saying on the news, all the like Starfleet people completely went rogue. Like, oh god, they're all Like, what do you mean? Like, this is happening? Like, we don't get any, like, actual look at the humans that have to deal, like, the everyday people. And that's one of the things that gives us, like, huge library book energy as a season for me, because you just have, like, this urgent conflict the main cast has to deal with, and they're headlong in this giant battle for the soul of the universe, you know? I'm sorry, Scott. Go ahead, please.
Oh, mine was just about Frontier Day. I figured the other races didn't want to sit around watching the Federation pat itself on the back.
But they're like part of it, though. You know, they were like in the Federation too, or you know, not Klingons, but other folks would. You know, it's odd.
Yeah, what Shelby was saying in her speech, which she obviously spent a lot of time working on, how it was kind of like the commemoration of the beginning of Starfleet. Talking about the first voyage of the NX-01, and it's like, oh, from Enterprise, yeah. So I really think this had more to do with Starfleet than the Federation itself.
But they sort of talk about how the two are one, though, in this episode, don't they? And it's interesting that, everybody is asked, like, why would they want to sync everything up? Well, they mentioned in that speech that it's like a defensive thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, now we've gone from exploration to military tactical stuff.
Okay, so are we going to hear... Oh, I'm sorry, Dale. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, George, stop, because that's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're not going to see Moriarty again. He wasn't there for anything really serious.
Nope.
Go ahead, Robbie.
I wanted to say, like, are we going to hear about the people affected by all this stuff in a later series after this? Are we going to get any, like, semblance of idea what it was like when the Borg took over Earth and, like, took over all of the Starfleet computers that went to the other computers of the world governments? Are we going to hear anything about the, like, thousands of people that, like, were assimilated into the Borg and now have to, like, completely live their lives outside of it? No, that's probably the most likely reason why I'm not even excited about Star Trek Legacy if that ever gets its feet on the ground. Like, this just seems like a throwaway story that's going to get resolved in one episode.
That's sort of like a way
right.
The Expanse is better than Star Trek, and at least in this time period. Like, The Expanse, like, integrates civilian perspectives versus just like the people in the forefront of the action 100% of the time.
Right.
I want to see Picard, like, struggle over from being, like, so worn down, even in his robot body. Like, what, we don't get any of that type of stuff.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, and this is why we love doing the show live for you guys, because you add in some of the best stuff. Thanks, George. Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, Norman. Love you guys.
Thanks, me too. Had you, man. It's your jam. Okay, let's get back to being somewhat serious, since I think we've about actually exhausted the questions.
I think we got to do some rankings.
Ranking time! All right. I shall go first. And Dustin, I totally agree with you. I would have given this one a lot higher before we all started talking about how contrived the plot was. I definitely would have hit a 9 based on, little things like, again, the more human moments with Data, not just from making bad jokes when, like, he goes in and, like, puts his hand on Picard's shoulder. He's trying to reassure him. Love that. The massive ship porn shots of Frontier Day. I'm getting to it. A little bit for Jack realizing what he isn't, but then, just sort of giving up and like, whatever, I'm fine, I'm out. But yeah, it's all too contrived, so I'm knocking it down 2 points to a 7.
Oh, is it my turn?
It is.
It is.
I had very much the same reaction. The way that I ranked it was, on first watch, I gave it a 9. On the second watch, I gave it an 8. On the third watch, I gave it a 7.5. I wanted it to be a 9, and the first time I watched it, it was amazing. But the more into it I got, the more I was confused. I felt like a kitten playing with yarn. I didn't know where all the strings were going. So yeah, somewhere between 7 and a 9. Sorry.
So would you go with 7.5 as your final?
Yeah, I think 7.5.
Okay.
Okay.
I think between the science babble being just way beyond the pale as far as like suspension of disbelief, like even by Star Trek standards, the fact that the shuttle was able to get away completely unperturbed, the fact that Jack was able to just slide off of the Titan no problem, like their security officers should all be fired and ejected into space. Like the Titan was taken over again so easily. It's just and the entirety of Starfleet, you would think they would have some sort of like countermeasure in place to prevent assimilation on Moss, but apparently not. So all of those things and the lack of Livingston, the lionfish, really bothers me. So I'm gonna give it like a 4 because I do enjoy some of the nostalgia, but the plot is just painful. It's painful.
I think I can't give this thing any more than a 6 because there are a few moments where it's like, that is kind of cool, and to go back through this, maybe. Look, the second time I went back through this, I just wanted it to end, and I think that's a bad like viewing experience no matter what. Like the first time I went through this, it's like, okay, we have some plot momentum going through, we have something pushing us forward into some type of finale. I guess I can be okay with this. But if I watch this a second time and it doesn't hold up in that manner, then it's a failure as an episode on the whole. Because I think Shaw's death is so melodramatic as to be unbelievable. When you look at the scene, he gets shot, and they have this whole argument about how he's not going to be there anymore. That guy is not more than 7 or 8 feet away, and he would just keep shooting at them, and that ruins the whole thing for me. Like, it's not interesting. They're not hiding behind barrels. Like, they're standing up and having this argument and in plain sight. Like, that's bad filmmaking all around, and it destroys what should be a central part of this season, a redeeming part for Shaw's character, and it just feels like haphazard Star Trek at best. Like, so I think giving this a 6 is even generous at times, because I feel like the whole thing with Jack going into the Borg and becoming part of the collective, like, that's the easiest thing you could do. That's the easiest narrative thing you could do. We've already been dealing with the Borg for a while, but of course we don't have any time to set up anything else that would make sense or like be a callback to the earlier parts of the season. Because guess what? We already wasted all this other time trying to protect Jack and not having character dynamics elsewhere in the universe, or character dynamics that are appealing enough throughout the season that it actually works on the level that it should in the way other Star Trek should. I so yeah, I guess I can only give it a 6. If you really don't like this season, then I would say a 5.5. It is even generous too.
Okay. When I said I wanted to give it a 9 earlier, what I actually meant is I want to give it a 9.5, but I am still going to give it a 9. And here is why.
God.
A lot of the problems that we just laid out are problems with the season that we've already dinged the show for. And yes, our talk has brought my enjoyment of the episode down overall, but when you compare it, I put my rankings in relating it to other Star Trek. There's 800 episodes of Star Trek roughly, so giving it a 9, I'm saying that it's 80 from the top. It's not, I think it's way more than number like 300 or 400 where you guys have it. I think it's really entertaining all the way through as an episode, whether or not we like all of the things that happen. I mean, here are the things that bring it down for me. We killed Shaw. You killed my favorite character in the show. Thanks. Well, I mean, since we got rid of Rios was my favorite character. Um, the lighting brings it down a little bit. But really, those are the only two things. I'm actually here for the nostalgia with the D, especially with Majel. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9, and that's gonna bring our average as a group to 6.7.
Okay. The only thing I'm going to say in response to what you said, Vanessa, as a little bit of an apologist, the reason the Titan kept getting taken over so easily was from a certain point on, like from the point Ro Laren showed up, they were operating with a skeleton crew, so much easier to take over. But other than that, guess we're wrapping up.
Yeah, do you want to do it or do you want me to?
Your channel, you go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott, for hosting today. Since our good friend Mr. Know-It-All was supposed to be here with us and had an emergency at the last minute, so we hope he and his family are doing well today. And hopefully he will be with us for the final episode next week. And I hope all of you join us because this is going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait. We'll probably be here for a couple hours next week. So, get your pee pads ready. We're going to sit here. We are going to do some Star Trek. And then when we're done, in the following weeks, we've got 8 weeks between the end of Picard and Strange New Worlds. We are going to each host an episode about probably just an episode and not so much topics like we've done in the past. I know I'm going to start here in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about Spock's brain and whether or not it's really the worst thing you would think in the franchise. Otherwise, thank you everybody for tuning in with us. Thank you for all of my panelists that have joined us today. And we will see you here next Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, live long and prosper.